Welcome to the beautiful Styrian Mountains for another chapter in the story of the Austrian Grand Prix. It's a short lap here in Spielberg with just 10 corners, 7 rights and 3 lefts, making up the total distance of 2.6 miles. And expect to see a lot of cars running wide today, especially through the last corner, as the wet conditions make the cars skittish through the downhill sections. Joining me on this very wet day is a man who's no stranger to driving in miserable conditions. Anthony Davidson, you've driven open cockpit, you've driven sports cars. How does the wet weather experience change between the different disciplines?
Well, I wouldn't say there's much difference in all honesty. You know, besides the terrifying closing speeds you find in sports cars with the different categories all sharing the same track, driving in the rain is, well, driving in the rain. Of course, the biggest difference between the two is the closed cockpit versus the open cockpit. You get the luxury of staying dry in the sports car, but if your screen ever gets dirty, well, that's a pit stop. Not just wiping your visor or pulling away a tear off, but most of the time, you know, they're both as miserable as each other, to be honest.
Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. Valtteri Bottas lines up on pole position, edging out Max Verstappen, who'll start from P2. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Perez, Hamilton, Lando Norris and Leclerc, Ricciardo, Sainz, Vettel, the owner driver, Gasly, Tsunoda, Fernando Alonso and Ocon, Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, George Russell and Robert Schwartzman, Mick Schumacher, Mazepin, Latifi and Lance Stroll brings the grid to a close. And with lights out just moments away, it's time to go down to the track.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, and it is another My Team Career Mode video, and as I'm sure you can see, we're on the grid for the Austrian Grand Prix, and it's going to be quite a wet Austrian Grand Prix. As you can see, we're on the Inters, those green text just peeping out of the tyre blankets there. It's going to be a slippery race. I mean, we've had one other wet race this season that, of course, was full wet to slick conditions. Of course, we never got onto the slicks ourselves because we wouldn't have made the time back up and got the overtakes back done. But it's going to be an interesting one because the Spanish Grand Prix were fine on the full wets, but we certainly struggled on the intermediates. Hopefully that pattern will not continue today. If you didn't watch yesterday's qualifying, I would recommend it. It was good, solid qualifying. You know, we had a spin in, I think it was in a Q2, we still managed to get through. Q3 didn't really have that pace through the cars in these wet conditions. But in terms of the grid, no changes really from what happened yesterday with the order, apart from one grid penalty that has been taken. Lance Stroll has dropped towards the back of the field. As I'm sure you can see, in terms of the race strategy, you have, of course, got 36 laps round Spielberg and 2 different options. There is the 1-stop on the intermediates or the 2-stop on the intermediates. As I'm sure you can see, it's going to be light rain throughout the race. We will not be getting onto slicks and we will not be going on full wets. It's going to be Inters for the whole thing. There's no complications with that, which is kind of bad for us in a way because we really did manage to get an advantage pinning under the safety car at Spain, but it's going to be Inters all the way in this one. 18 laps for the first stint, 18 laps for the second one. Not complicated really there. Simple 1-stop on the lovely green marked tyres. It's going to be interesting, that, as I say, to see how we manage to do in these conditions. You know, I don't know if we're going to have the same sort of pace we had in qualifying. In terms of if we'd have had a full wet qualifying like Inters conditions all the way through, we probably would have finished something like P14. In terms of the grid, no real surprises, of course. You guys will see it yesterday, apart from Pierre Gasly, and we're going to go and have a look at the grid in a teeny bit more detail now. Well then, in terms of the grid, only one real surprise, that's Pierre Gasly lining up P11. He was caught out on those mediums in Q2 when the tyres you got through on Q2 didn't make a difference at all, because it's going to be inters all the way in this one. So you could use the softs if you wanted to. You could use the mediums, but it's a bit of a risk, especially for those like Pierre Gasly who hang around near the bottom of the top 10. He was caught out and was knocked out in the second part of qualifying. In terms of the grid, though, in the battles on field, Bottas, Verstappen, Perez, Hamilton are your front four. Mercedes have the advantage in this order, despite being further behind by quite a chunk in the R&D. Be interesting to see if Red Bulls, Verstappen and Perez can really get up there and fight with Bottas maybe for the win. Of course, Perez has got a lot of work to do. You know, the trio of Hamilton, Verstappen and Bottas are quite a way in front. Of course, Bottas has a chunkier lead. If he stays up front, it's going to make it even harder for Verstappen and Hamilton to be able to score points in the score enough points to catch up to the Finn in the remaining 5 races. Of course, Checo Perez needs a fantastic result. He needs some great results if he wants to get back into the championship fight. But at this stage, he's pretty much out of it, and Valtteri Bottas is looking fairly comfortable up at the top. McLaren versus Ferrari were back with this battle. It wasn't really competitive between the two in France. Ferrari had a huge advantage over McLaren. Of course, Daniel Ricciardo didn't finish, sadly, thanks to a mechanical failure. Sainz and Leclerc for Ferrari looking much better than the two McLarens in the drivers, but it'll be interesting to see if the McLarens can sort of reel in Ferrari this weekend, because they are a long way behind and Leclerc is quite a way off the front of Norris, Ricciardo and Sainz. It'd be very interesting, as I was saying, to see if McLaren can make inroads, and specifically if Lando Norris, Daniel Ricciardo and Carlos Sainz can make inroads too. Sebastian Vettel, P9, solid for him. He pretty much got through because he was putting good laps. It was going to be between him and Pierre Gasly. Had Gasly used the softs, he probably would have got through himself, but didn't. You know, I think we got through P10, or was it P9 in Q2? Anyway, one of those two. You know, Pierre Gasly definitely would have been, probably would have been in the top 10 had he managed to go out at the start, gone out on those softs at the start instead of the mediums, because then he wouldn't have had to guard again and improve. Or if had he done, he still probably would have been comfortably in the top 10, even if he hadn't have improved going out again on the softs, because his first lap was on the softs. He's got Yuki Tsunoda alongside. It'd be interesting to see if AlphaTauri are going to make their way past us to score some more points and stay fairly close to McLaren in the constructors. They need points because we're way ahead of them too. We're even ahead of McLaren, I do believe. So can't really see that sticking, but it'd be nice if it did. Fernando Alonso P13 with Esteban Ocon P14. The Alpines need a good result. Still yet to score after 4 races. They don't want to make it a consecutive 5 and go into the halfway mark of this season without anything on the board. They need something good. The Alfa Romeos just behind them. They'll be looking to see if they make their way up the order. They might want some points, but that would take quite a miracle for them to get there from P15 and 16. George Russell will start P17 with my teammate P18. Then Schumacher, Mazepin, Latifi, of course, the Williams, similar in the R&D to Haas, and Latifi, with low focus, has dropped behind Mazepin and Schumacher, with Lance Stroll rounding out the grid, having to take a grid penalty. So really there weren't many surprises yesterday in the grid order. A bit of a surprise to see Mercedes so competitive and McLaren so competitive after last weekend with their rivalries in a sense. But we've got our rival, Sebastian Vettel, in front of us this one. It's going to be a very tough Grand Prix in these wet intermediate conditions. It's a clear one-stop, no real surprises, so we might as well get into a rain-soaked Austrian Spielberg Grand Prix. Yeah, we go then for the 5th round of the season. 5 red lights. They're out, a long hold, and away we go. A long anticipated Grand Prix, as here comes Yuki Tsunoda down our left-hand side. Can we try and send it down the inside of Seb Vettel into the first corner? Yes, we can. Gasly side by side there. We've got an Alpine behind, battling with Yuki Tsunoda, and Yuki Tsunoda's going to come on back on his teammate. Very close start here at Spielberg. Hopefully we can go down the inside of Vettel. Everyone's scrapping at the moment. not the smoothest on the exit. We're struggling for grip. A yellow flag. I don't think there was an incident. I think everyone's just so stacked up in these wet conditions at the moment, as we've got Sainz in front. Leclerc still P6, Norris still P5. Perez has lost out to the Mercedes of Mr. Lewis Hamilton here. So not good news for him, and certainly not good news for his teammate, Verstappen, who will be wanting to be having a bit of protection from a title rival so that he can go and push the other title rival, Valtteri Bottas. We'll have a look at a replay in the start, but not the best as it begins for Red Bull. Very good start for the two Mercedes. The race, a replay off the start, ourselves parting in P10. At the front, you've got the Mercedes of Valtteri Bottas, got off decently well. So did Lewis Hamilton as we head down to the first corner. The Ferraris and the McLaren scrapping side by side. Leclerc tries to go down the inside there. Meanwhile, Sainz going down the inside. We send it down the inside on Vettel with Gasly on the outside there. Loads of action here. And you can see we're going side by side up here with Sebastian Vettel behind. The Alpha Tauris are battling there. Yuki Tsunoda, I think, looking to send it down the inside, but then we've got Vettel getting a better acceleration. We're getting in front of Sebastian Vettel, and what a start here. Loads of cars very close together in a very wet Austrian Grand Prix. Ourselves P9 behind, of course, Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda settling out, with Esteban Ocon, Fernando Alonso, Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Russell, Schwartzman and Mazepin further behind. In front, no changes for the Ferraris and the McLarens, but I think we'll have a look at the race replay from a different view. I think we'll have a look at it from Lewis Hamilton's view. Well, I wanted to show this to you guys, the view of Lewis Hamilton off the start. On board with him, 5 red lights, they went out, and he got a much better start than Sergio Perez alongside in front. Verstappen forced a bit to the right hand side, Bottas taking the middle of the track, and Lewis Hamilton tries to go down the inside of Sergio Perez there, side by side, heading along this section. As I'm sure you can see, Lewis Hamilton through on Sergio Perez, who's sat behind. He tries to have a little look round the outside line to this right-hander, but Lewis Hamilton keeps the position up into P3 for the Brit, and Mercedes are looking to be in a very comfortable position off the start for their Constructors' Championship. Well then, lap number 2, and we're actually managed to stay fairly close to the back of Carlos Sainz here. We're chasing him up the hill, a little bit of a lock-up on entry, but we're not dropping too far away, with Vettel then behind, and the two Alpha Tauris having a bit of Noah's Ark, and then you've got the two Alpines and the two lovely Alfa Romeos as we go very deep into that corner. Don't really get the line we want. So difficult are these downhill corners in wet conditions, especially the one back there. Just got to try and catch back up to Sainz. There will be, of course, no DRS in this one. No assistance for overtaking. We won't have loads and loads of swapping positions. It's going to be pretty hard to get a move. You're going to have to be very close to another car, and you're going to have a lot more pace than they do if you want to go for a move, or you're going to have a really good corner exit, and they're going to have to make a mistake. It's not going to be an easy one to overtake as Valtteri Bottas goes quickest again. He still leads the Grand Prix. Well then, end of lap number 3, on to 4, and we're going pretty nicely here. Chasing Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari just in front of us, as behind Sebastian Vettel's dropping a bit away. The field's starting to spread a little bit. We've got a bit of 2 by 2 going on across the field. We're sticking to the back of Carlos, but it's so difficult to get close enough to be able to go for an overtake. P9, certainly a solid start to this Grand Prix, but as you can see, it's so tough in these conditions to get close enough to another car to be able to then go for a move. It's really quite difficult at the moment. The Spaniard in front, so easy to make little mistakes like that don't affect you too much, but you do lose an important couple of tenths in these conditions. And you can see this lap certainly haven't been that quick. We've got to try and catch back up to Sainz, and hopefully at some point we might be able to get into a bit of a fight with them. But the field is really starting to spread out quite a bit. It's a snake, and there's sort of equal distance gaps between everyone, but it is gonna keep on breaking up, and it's quite broken up coming on to the 5th lap of quite a short circuit. Well, and a lovely lap number 6 update, and as I'm sure you can see, we're still pretty close to Carlos Sainz in front, not trundling along too badly as it stands. The order pretty much staying the same. Lance Stroll still stuck behind 2 Haasers at the moment. My teammate on the back of Russell, the Williams, who's then on the back of the Alfa Romeos and the Alpines, and behind Vettel still in front of Gasly. You just can't get close enough to the back of another car to go for an overtake, because all you've got is raw slipstream and some ERS, and around a track where the straights aren't really that long, it means overtaking in these conditions is very difficult. So we're just sort of sat here currently down in P9, so you've got to be careful not to lose it on these types of corners, which are quite difficult. As I'm sure you can see, the car sliding around quite a lot. It's turning into quite a slippery and difficult track to drive on at the moment. A messy lap there. We've got a lot of catching up to do to get to side. Lap number 8 update then. Not too much to report on, but field is spreading out more. We are struggling to stay close to Sainz. We haven't really been within a second of him for quite a while, but as I'm sure you can see on the mini-map and on the timing, Vettel is dropping away from us. He's 4 seconds behind now, flirting with that in about 3.8-ish around there. But Sebastian Vettel certainly doesn't have the pace that we have, the Ferraris and the McLarens have, and is defending from what I do suspect will be a faster AlphaTauri duo, as we are just locking up into everything here. I'm really struggling at the moment, but he's defending from a faster AlphaTauri duo, and as a result he sort of dropped away from the front few, and you can see that this Ferrari McLaren train is very spread out at this point, way beyond any sort of ability to have an overtake. Your only overtake possibilities are a lot further back in the field, and still there, not much at all is really happening at this point in the Grand Prix. It's been a pretty dismal start to this one in terms of overtaking. No one's really making any progress up the order, and not much is really happening as we hit lap number 10. It's been really an uneventful one since the start. Hopefully the pit stop soon will spice it up on maybe an incident, maybe a safety car. Now that would make it a bit more interesting, but the tyre wear is actually fairly high at the moment. A lot higher than I was expecting. We have locked up quite a bit. Plenty of demonstrations of that. So if you want to learn how to not drive well, then you should probably be watching me right now, because I'm giving you a perfect lesson in how to lock up. But we're starting to drop away from Sainz, Ricciardo, the rest of that Ferrari and McLaren train, but we're staying comfortably 4 seconds ahead of Vettel, so it's not looking too bad for a decent couple of points in this one here at Spielberg today, in what is a very wet Grand Prix, so it wouldn't be a bad result at all to take 2 points in our first season here.
Gap ahead is 2.5 seconds.
We seem to be alright in Sector 3. I am pushing quite a lot in Sector 3. Sector 1 and 2 is where we're losing the time. Lap number 12 here, and we've got Carlos in front. Not doing too badly as it stands on these inters, 45% on the front left though. We're getting a lot of tyre wear. It's not really affecting our times though. We're not doing too badly. We're gaining on Vettel, 6 seconds. As you can see, the field is so spread out at this point. My teammate's something like 16 seconds behind, and he's in these conditions when there's no DRS and stuff, the cars just get stuck in small trains, break off from big groups. It really is quite an interesting dynamic you get in conditions like this. It is quite slippery out on track. It's not really getting any worse. It's not getting any better. It's just going to continue this light rain, intermediate conditions to the end of the race here. So we're going to be stuck on the same type of compound. Of course, we will be pitting in around about 6-ish laps. Depends. I think I'm probably going to be coming on lap 18. Not going to stretch out another lap, because the tyre wear is going to be pretty high then, and we don't want to be getting towards
Gap to the car in front is
like 80%.
5 seconds.
on the front tyres. So yeah, as you can see, we're taking a lot into turn 1. The runoff isn't too slippery somehow at the moment, so not too bad. Been there a couple of times by accident. But an Alfa Romeo into the pits, as we've supposedly got a little bit of problem there. I think that's just our ICE hitting 60%. We will be taking another one at the next Grand Prix in Britain. We certainly need a bit of more power there with those lovely longish straights overtaking opportunities. Didn't think power would be too big of a thing today. You know, we didn't really need a new ICE. You can't be taking one every 2 races. We're taking one every 3. Messi this lap, a little bit stunned by that. But yeah, an Alfa Romeo into the pits. Is it an out-of-the-box strategy, or is it something different? I don't know why they're into the pits, but might have been front wing damage. Coming to the end of lap number 15. We're not going too badly. Definitely still gaining slowly on the group with Vettel and the Alpha Tauris. That is the battle for 1 point. There's 3 of them, and there's barely anything separating Vettel and Gasly.
In around 2 laps, and we'll be putting you on the intermediate tyres.
There's barely any gap between them, but because of the conditions, you just can't get close enough, and you can't really get an overtake. Really, it's just 1 by 1, and you can tell that by the fact Lance Stroll still hasn't got past the Hassers, and they are not exactly very quick compared to his Aston Martin machinery. So certainly not what they'd be wanting at the moment at the Aston Martin team. They'd be hoping that Stroll could have made some progress, but maybe, you know, this is one of the worst races potentially to be taking a grid penalty. Spain really wasn't, with the way it was shaken up in the end, but this certainly is proving like one where you might as well, if you're going to be contending for points, don't take a penalty this weekend, because really you're not going to be able to make any progress and you're going to be stuck there. But we are over 8 seconds ahead of Sebastian Vettel. We really are struggling with some tyre wear now. A little bit wear on that ICE as it stands. A little bit of wear on the TC2. So some parts will need replacing for the next Grand Prix, though. That's fine. They've had 3 races, so you can get a new, fresh one for them. We are starting to see a real drop-off with these intermediates now. We're going to be coming in next lap, end of next lap, for a fresh set. Hopefully that will send us to the end of the Grand Prix here in Austria.
The gap to the car ahead is 1.9 seconds.
But as I'm sure you can see, we really are struggling into corners. There is a lot of wear on these tyres. 61%. The field's very spread. The Alfa Romeo's caught up to some of the other cars, the Hassers and so on. So we're going to be coming in soon, and I think we certainly need it. Well then, halfway through the Grand Prix, and of course our lovely pit window, who is coming in. About half of the front runners are coming in as we're going to bring it into the lovely pits here. Lewis Hamilton, of course, has the fastest lap at the moment. The order is currently, I do believe, Bottas leading the Grand Prix. Then got Max Verstappen, Hamilton, Perez. We're in for our stop, and I do believe Pierre Gasly's also in for his stop. We've got such a big
Stay clear of the white
lead
line on the exit. We'll
in this one
if you cross
over the Alpines and so on, that we're actually going to come out ahead of Esteban Ocon here, and that just shows you how spread out the field is in this one, that we've come out ahead of the Alpines in this one. We're going fantastically well so far. Now we're on a fresh set of intermediates. We're going to have to get a bit of a feel for them, as we going to get a feel for how the tarmac is going these days, as we take a little bit of a road on, trip onto there. Hopefully we can put in a decent lap. You can see Tsunoda's only 5 seconds in front. He's yet to pit, so that shows you how much of a gain we've made on that train behind us. With Vettel now just 6 in front, it is pretty like
okay, there appears to be an issue.
Slow pit stops.
Currently investigating.
I've just been told by Jeff there appears to be an issue. You know, it's not exactly the time I'd want to be having a mechanical failure. Jeff, I'm pretty happy at the moment. You know, there might be a race later on in the season where we're having a nightmare.
Looks like we're experiencing an ERS software glitch. Good news, it looks like the fault has been fixed.
Are you sure, Jeff? Because currently, I can't turn off my ERS here.
Coming in for his stop.
I can't turn off my ERS. This is a problem. I can't actually turn off my ERS here. I don't know what's happened, but I can't turn it off, and it's making exits of corners horrible. Well, thankfully, the fault has resolved, because, I mean, there are less helpful things in life, but that certainly isn't helpful to have your ERS stuck on. Sainz has come into the pits.
Okay, gap ahead is 3.5 seconds.
He will be out in front of us. I do believe, yep, he is 1.6 seconds in front. Slightly fresher tyres. Thankfully our ERS is fixed, and hopefully we don't have another one of those later. And it does seem that in the pits, Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc has jumped the McLaren of Lando Norris. Ah, Leclerc, mate. Leclerc is having a fantastic season so far. And that's going to, hopefully for him, if he stays there, which he probably will, extend his lead in the Drivers' Championship on the McLaren drivers and his teammate, because he's got quite a lead, and that will maintain. But you can see the gap to Sainz is quite big. The gap back to Vettel, and then Gasly jumped him in the pits. We'll have a look at the order in a second. What's happened after everyone's on fresh tyres as Bottas goes quickest. People are starting to pump in some decent laps. We are struggling a little bit now. It takes a bit of time for me to find a rhythm on a new set of tyres, and then hopefully we should be able to push back towards Sainz maybe. But I can't see us really getting an overtake in this one. So difficult conditions to get anywhere near the car in front, and as you can see, the action seems to have happened in the pit stops. Well then, as I'm sure you can see, with that lovely green sector, we're starting to find some sort of pace here at the Red Bull Ring. Plenty of fastest laps being flown around. We're not going to get one of them, but we're certainly going to go green. I think they've been going pretty solid with our laps so far. The engine wear not looking too bad. Of course, we'll be replacing about 3 different things there for the next Grand Prix. Hopefully we don't have any more faults. In terms of faults though, there's one fault that I'm perfectly fine with having. Let's have a DRS fault. Let's get that out of the way, why not? Because that will not affect us one little bit here, because, well, you can't use it in these slippery, wet, rainy conditions on the inters. That wouldn't affect us at all. You can see Gasly and Vettel haven't been in our mirrors for a very long time in this one. And Gasly's got quite a lead on Vettel, and now Vettel's defending from Tsunoda, but I can't see Tsunoda coming through there, mainly because in this situation really you can't get an overtake at the moment, and that means that this order's pretty stationary unless you're extremely slow or extremely quick in comparison to the car. Not the cleanest of laps, just got to keep putting them in and ploughing through to the end of this one.
Manage your tyres.
Oh wait, and it does seem Lance Stroll's out of the session. I was about to move on to the next thing. Lance Stroll is out of the session. That's caught me out there. Stroll, mechanical failure. Shame for him.
Caution.
3rd DNF now, that's a shame.
Someone's come off ahead of you. There's a yellow flag ahead.
It looks like he's taken out my braking point there. Lance Stroll looks to be just
clear.
Parked, yep, so it seems that is just another mechanical failure for Lance Stroll. He's 3rd, I do believe, in 5 races. Certainly not having much luck so far this season. But really, it's not too bad for him this time out, because he wasn't in a potential position for points, nowhere near it, stuck behind a lot of slower cars. So it isn't the end of the world that he's going to be getting to go home a bit earlier today. Well then, a little bit of an update on my teammate. Lap number 24, chasing down George Russell. P18 at the moment, but Raikkonen's into pit. So P17 heading into this left-hander. Pretty smooth. And oh, he's lost it. He's lost it. Too aggressive on the throttle. What a shame for Robert there. What a shame. He's round. Fortunately, he won't lose the position because Kimi Raikkonen's so far behind. What a shame for Robert there. He was on the back of Georgie, but now he's about 7 seconds behind. Raikkonen is 3 seconds behind, so Schwartzman's still running a really decent race at the moment. He's going well in these slippery conditions. Shame it won't be mistake-free, but thankfully he won't be getting any sort of a losing positions because of that. He should be able to stay ahead of Raikkonen in these conditions where you can't really overtake. So Robert set for P17. He wasn't really going to get past George, just being pulled along by him. Not too bad for him. He's had some bad results so far at the start of the season. Shame in the wet at Spain, but he seems to be going alright in these type of conditions. P17 for him at the moment. I'd bring you a little recap of the order well after the first pit stop, of course, but interesting to see who is where. In terms of your leader, you got up at the top, Valtteri Bottas leads Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, then Sergio Perez. Charles Leclerc up into P5. He's jumped Lando Norris during the pit stops. Really great work from him. Then the two McLarens of Norris and Ricciardo. You then have Carlos Sainz, who is in P8. We're P9. Gasly has jumped Sebastian Vettel in the pit stop. Seb, who sits there still defending from Yuki Tsunoda, who can't get through because you just really can't overtake in these conditions. Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso are P13 and 14. That's the two Alpines for you. Then Antonio Giovinazzi for Alfa Romeo with his teammate Kimi Raikkonen down in P18. That is because, of course, he opted to go for the two-stopper. Wasn't related to front wing damage, I have checked that. Wasn't related to that, despite a little bit being chipped off his front right end plate. But he is P18 going for that out-of-the-box two-stopper. My teammate Robert Schwartzman, P17. He's dropped away from George Russell, but still, really good work from Robert to be P17. Hopefully he can stay there at to the end of the race. Raikkonen is P18 with Mazepin, Schumacher and Latifi rounding out the field, of course. You've then got Lance Stroll, who hasn't made it to the end of the race with a mechanical failure. So there's your order at the moment. Well then, about 10 laps to go in this one, end of lap 26. Out of 36 here, we've been going along really nicely this lap, starting to find some decent pace. Shame about our teammate, who's right behind Russell, doing a pretty good race there, and we're going to go quicker, set another PB in these wet conditions. The track does feel a little bit less slippery, but definitely nowhere near time for slicks, and you can see we're in absolute no man's land here, really. I mean, we are not too far away from Sainz and Ricciardo, but we are certainly quite a bit away, and in these conditions, for you to be close to another car, we're talking about 3/10, and it's quite a way back to Pierre Gasly, and then Vettel, who is keeping young Yuki Tsunoda behind him pretty well, but then again, you haven't got much to do in these conditions. As we make a little mistake there, not going to help us. We're just sort of sat here now. I feel a little bit like we've just got to bring it home at this point. Not much really to do in this one. A very sloppy middle sector this lap. That's cost us about a second there. Very messy. But we've just got to put in some okay laps and just bring it home. End of lap 28 on to 29, and we've gone quickest. Fantastic final sector there for us. Really hooked it up as we take a little bit of run onto the runoff, not that lethal in the wet, but we've taken the fastest lap here on lap 29, pumping in some decent stuff, and that's purple in the first of the three sectors. We're getting closer to Carlos Sainz, who's in front.
The turbocharger is on its last legs. Let's try to keep mileage on it to a minimum.
I know the turbocharger's struggling a little bit, but yeah, we should be comfortable to make it to the end of this one. Number 29, quicker in the first sector, slower in the middle one, but the gap between them is literally nothing as we're going to come through the final few corners. Is that little mistake on the exit going to cost us another fastest lap? It is by 2/10. We're going along pretty nicely here, but we are struggling for grip at points, so we're doing okay in this one. Doing okay. We need to keep pushing, putting in these laps, and we're certainly gaining quite a bit on Pierre Gasly. We're nearly into the point where we could pit again onto fresh tyres and still be P9. But that's just too much of a risk. That's pretty unnecessary. But I do believe, yeah, we can nearly do that. We definitely get out in P10. But we're starting to see the leaders approaching some back markers at this point in the Grand Prix. So we just might have a little bit of traffic that might spice things up. But really, there definitely needs to be something to spice up what has been a fairly slow-burning Austrian Grand Prix. Hopefully, someone throws a bit of kerosene on the track and we can bring along a couple of lighters to make it interesting. Well then, we might be about to see potentially an overtake here. Perez has been stuck to the back of Hamilton for the last few laps, who's been stuck to the back of Verstappen, and then who's been stuck to the back of Bottas. But you can see that Perez is coming through here, chasing the back of Hamilton. You've got back markers of the Haasers getting into it. Is Perez going to go down the inside? No, switches to the outside line into the right-hander. He's going to go for it. Hamilton's poor on the exit, and Sergio Perez is through up into P3. One of the few on-track overtakes we have seen here today. And behind, it's Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin, side by side. These two tussling, and it does look like you're going to see these two side by side. Now, yeah, Nikita Mazepin, will he have a look down the inside line into the right-hander on his teammate? Yes, he does, by having to let Perez and Hamilton through. They're now going side by side through here. Nikita Mazepin's through with Schumacher 20th and Latifi 21st. Great to see a battle between these guys, but there's a replay of some overtakes. Plenty of action here. Good to see something happening later on lap 30. It's been an eventful lap, and you can see the back markers are causing problems for the front runners and also causing problems for themselves, but it does mean we're getting overtakes, and you've got to love some overtakes. Lap number 32, and a little bit of an update, not much to document on. We will be potentially reaching some back markers by the end of this one. Leclerc's cleared all of the both Haasers and a Williams as it stands. Not too much happening. No real horrific stages of wear on the engine, just some stuff that will need replacing for the British Grand Prix. It is slippery still.
For now, everything's looking good.
Everything is looking jolly great, Jeff. Everything really is. I mean, I enjoy these. I mean, I know it's not like these sort of races where you can really just get going, put laps in, and it is literally just time trial for 36 laps with a little bit of reserving some tyres in there and keeping the car the right way around. But it really has been a fun Grand Prix for me. I've enjoyed it.
Laps of fuel remaining.
But as we come on to the last few laps here, there hasn't been too much drama in this one. Hopefully there might be some late stuff. Fingers crossed, not involving ourselves. But lap 33 out of 36 will be approaching some back markers soon, and that might be some of the only overtaking we're going to get in this Grand Prix after the first lap for ourselves here, and it's going to be getting past Latifi, the back marker. And in terms of Latifi, behind the two Haasers,
Be with us for a while now.
he's just struggling. He really is. You know, he's not having a great season. Doesn't have fantastic focus at the moment. You know, we're not, at this stage in the Grand Prix, we're not flying, we're not putting in beautiful, beautiful laps. We're just sort of bringing it home at this point. No need to do anything silly. There's no way we're going to be able to get past Carlos Sainz at the moment. Latifi just in front.
5 seconds.
Not the easiest to lap a car in the rain, but hopefully Latifi's going to make it nice and easy for us. Yes, he is. Thanks a lot, Nicholas. And we're going to approach the Haas of Mick Schumacher, his teammate Nikita Mazepin in front. We could see some interesting things here, because as you can see in front, Mazepin's had to slow down to let Sainz through, and here comes Schumacher, comes through, and we managed to lap him, and now Mazepin's going to drop back behind Latifi there. Oh dear. He might drop behind him, or he might just stay ahead, but Bit of a shame for Mazepin. Usually it can be the drivers that are lapping cars can get affected by it. This time it's been the lapped cars getting affected by it. This lap certainly hasn't been that bad, and it isn't that bad at all. We're not feeling the effects of tyre wear here, like any of the drivers. I really could be on fresh inters at this point. Not feeling the effect, and we've gone quickest again. We're chasing down Carlos Sainz. Going to take you through my final lap. Just bringing it home here. We're not going to go for anything really quick or anything. We're just going to bring it nicely home in this one. Your winner is going to be the championship leader from Max Verstappen, and then Sergio Perez will round out the podium. Not exactly what Red Bull would have been hoping for here at the Red Bull Ring, but certainly not a disaster. We've got work to do though in the Constructors' Championship, heading into Silverstone and then the rounds after that. We're not going too badly at the moment, but this has been a simple race as Valtteri Bottas is going to win the Grand Prix. 36 laps of Red Bull Ring. Not too much drama. A very wet race here, but we've had some good quality pumping in laps, and we're going to come home P9 with the fastest lap.
Okay, pick up rubber and bring it home.
A fantastic team effort to secure victory here in the Styrian Alps. So Anthony, what made the difference out there today?
Rain always has the potential to liven up a race and mix up the order, and they've taken full advantage of that to claim the victory today. It's always a bit of a lottery when the conditions are like this, but they've managed to stay on circuit and have come out on top.
After an excellent performance at the Grand Prix, I'm sure there'll be plenty of celebrations tonight amongst the Mercedes team, and they certainly deserve it.
Well then, the final results of the Austrian Grand Prix race. 21 finishers, no real drama in this one, but a really nice one to drive. In terms of your winner, Valtteri Bottas takes home another victory. He, of course, takes that lovely 25 points. First on the grid to first at the flag. Everyone went for a one-stop, apart from Kimi Räikkönen, who sort of paid the price in the end. So really great result for Valtteri Bottas there. P1, that'll extend his lead in the Drivers' Championship. Max Verstappen was P2 in the Drivers' Championship, and he will remain there after this one. Drop further away from Valtteri Bottas, but he will gain 6 points on Lewis Hamilton. The front three starting to form, and we're starting to see gaps between them increase. Sergio Perez with P3. Solid from him. Good to see him putting in a decent result this time. Of course, he had to take a grid penalty last time because of an engine component change. Then before that, he had to take... he had a mechanical failure, of course, at Imola. So he's had a bit of a troubled start to the season. Good to see him take some points, but he's still going to be losing them to Verstappen and Bottas. He's pretty much out of the title fight, but he may be able to catch up to Lewis Hamilton, who takes a disappointing P4, dropping him even further away from his teammate. Another 13 points lost to the Finn. Hamilton certainly starting to drop away from this title fight, and if he continues to do so later in the season, it could be Bottas just sailing away with it. Verstappen P2, Hamilton P3, but not that great a result from there. He managed to get ahead of Perez off the start, but lost it later on in the Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc continues his fantastic form with another lovely P5 ahead of the McLarens and his teammate from 6th on the grid. Stayed there for most of the race, but then managed to get him in the pit stops. I was literally the only way to overtake in this one, and he made it work. P6 on the grid to P5 at the flag. Another lovely 10 points for the Monegasque, and that's going to really help him in the driver's standings. We'll have a look at that in a minute. Lando Norris, a solid result, P6. Another 8 points to add to his slowly growing tally. Poor start to the season, but he is recovering slowly. Finished ahead of his teammate and Sainz today. Good result for him. Couldn't stay ahead of Leclerc. A bit of a shame there for him, but good, solid result. And that's what he needs if he wants a good result by the end of the season in the championship. Daniel Ricciardo, P7, the Australian, in the lovely McLaren. You know, he's done well to stay ahead of Sainz. He certainly doesn't have the pace of his teammate or Charles, really. Him and Sainz are sort of further behind in the sort of teammate dynamic. But a solid result for Daniel. You sort of saw that Leclerc started to chase down Hamilton in front once he'd got past Lando. Meanwhile, Lando just sort of sat there. Ricciardo finished about 4 seconds behind his teammate, with Carlos Sainz just behind him. Another decent result for the Spaniard. Maybe would have hoped for some more points, maybe getting past Ricciardo, judging on the R&D standings, but pretty solid and shouldn't lose too many in that battle between him and Danny Rick. We finished P9 with a fantastic fastest lap. Managed to hook a few really good ones up. I didn't really feel the effects of tyre wear, so when we got later in the race and less fuel road, I wasn't struggling with the tyre wear, I was just struggling with grip. So meanwhile, others couldn't set really great laps at the end of the race because they're struggling with the tyre wear. We weren't at all. We were the only driver to get into the 1 minute 13, so 1 minute 13.6, 6 tenths-ish quicker than Verstappen and Perez's best lap, 7 quicker than Valtteri Bottas's. Pierre Gasly, P10 from 11. Had he have started ahead of Vettel, he might have been able to get into the battle with ourselves. And then the McLarens and the Ferraris, bit of a disappointing weekend for him, but at least it's a point. At least it's a point after last time out at France. Solid for him, with Sebastian Vettel, P11. Really, he was never going to be as quick as the AlphaTauris. He dropped down the order, lost the position to us, and then lost a position to Gasly in the pits. A shame for him. And it actually does seem that I didn't realise this, but I thought P12 should have been the AlphaTauri of Yuki Tsunoda, who didn't finish. Didn't realise that. I think it must have been... We'll have a check maybe in a second, but I think that's a mechanical failure late on in the race for him. What a shame for Yuki. He wasn't in the points, though, which means that Sebastian Vettel might have had a bit of rest for the last few laps, not having to defend from him. Esteban Ocon, P12 with Alonso, P13. They still yet to score points for Alpine. Yes, Ocon moved up 2 places, but still, they need to get some points to Alpine. In their terrible position at the moment. They need those points, and they're just not getting them. They need to be able to get closer to Aston Martin to be able to compete, but they're falling back towards the Alfa Romeos, one of which finished behind them, Antonio Giovinazzi, P14. Really good result for him, with George Russell, P15 for Williams. Williams, solid there, the first of the cars to be lapped. Not too bad, really, for him, considering how slow the Williams car is at the moment. Robert Schwartzman, P16. My teammate, solid race for him. If he hadn't made that spin, it would have been a really, really good drive from him, but still solid. With Kimi Räikkönen behind him in P17, attempted the 2-stopper, and by golly, did it not work. Shame for him, but just poor. Really, trying to go for the 2-stopper. It's not going to work. It's pretty obvious, it's going to be much slower, and he paid the price not being near his teammate at the flag. Mick Schumacher, P18 ahead of Nikita Mazepin, P19. Those two had a bit of a tussle, of course, with all the backmarkers, with them being backmarkers and having to be lapped, caused a bit of problems for the front runners, but also caused problems for themselves, and shook those two around a bit. Nicholas Latifi finishes P20. Disappointing result for him, last of the finishers. Yuki Tsunoda and Lance Stroll sadly didn't make it to the flag. Your standings there, no real changes, as I'm sure you can see down the order. Just a little bit of a kerfuffle with 5th to 8th. Valtteri Bottas extends his lead on Max Verstappen to 26 points now. That is a win and a fastest lap. So Bottas has a very chunky and healthy lead on the Dutchman, with Lewis Hamilton then 35 points off the lead on 60 2, 9 points behind Max Verstappen, and is starting to drift away from the title fight. Charles Leclerc remains P4 with 56 points, 2 ahead of Checo Perez, who is P5. Really solid from Charles to still be pretty close to the likes of Hamilton and Perez there. He's doing solid, so solid this season, and he's probably going to end up finishing P5, which is really, really good work from him. Checo Perez, of course, has moved up to P5. He's got 54 points. No, 54 points, sorry. We are 44. He's got 54 points, 2 points behind Charles Leclerc. If you look at the amount of points he's got compared to Hamilton, he actually isn't too far away. Only 8 points off Lewis Hamilton now, with Lewis Hamilton not really getting that fantastic of results. So as a result, we might actually see potentially Perez being able to get into a battle with Hamilton for third at the end of the season, but he certainly is a long way off the lead, 43 points to be exact. Ourselves, we've dropped down to P6 there, pretty inevitable, 44 points, still going really strong this season. Hopefully we can continue that form into the second half of it, but 44 points, that's certainly good enough for the whole season. Really, you know, I wasn't really expecting to get any more than like 40 points by the end of it, and at the halfway mark we have 44. Danny Rick has moved up to P7, back ahead of Carlos Sainz. Both of those are P7 and 8, and they have 30 points each. 14 points behind us. They are not really that competitive at the moment compared to Charles Leclerc. He's 26 points ahead. That's a win and a fastest lap, as we had further above. So it looks at the moment like Ricciardo and Sainz are going to be tussling at the end of this season for potentially P6, depends how well we run. And then looking further down the order, Pierre Gasly, P9 at the moment, stays there, same amount of points as Lando Norris. Gasly looking pretty solid potentially for a top 10, probably predicting 10th by the end of the season. Got some good point scores, but I can't see him catching up to the likes of Sainz and Ricciardo, really, or ourselves. Lando Norris, of course, P10 on his recovery, 23 points now. Still a long way to go if he wants to catch up to his teammate, Sainz, and then a very long way to go if he wants to get to Charles Leclerc in front. Seb Vettel outside the top 10 in terms of the points. He has 9. Tsunoda behind him, still with 8, and Stroll has 2. Everyone else still yet to score. That's the Alpines, the Alfa Romeos, the Williams, the Haas, and my teammate. In the constructors standings, Mercedes, 159 points, with Red Bull P2 with 125, 34 behind. So it's looking like Mercedes is starting to take a really strong hold this season in the constructors. Ferrari are P3 with 86 points, 73 points behind the lead, but comfortably ahead of McLaren, who sit in P4 with just 53. They've moved up above us. We have 44 in P5. We're certainly probably going to, I think we're going to stay P5. It's going to be tough to stay ahead of AlphaTauri, but I do think we can do it, and P5 would be a fantastic result at the end of this season. AlphaTauri, P6 at the moment. They have 31 points, closing in on us, you would say, but then we've extended the lead this time out anyway. Of course, with us finishing P9 and fastest lap, Gasly only managing P10 today. Aston Martin round out those who have points. They have 11, going steadily, looking strong for 7th, with Alpine still yet to score, along with Alfa Romeo, Williams and Haas. Those 4 not looking too great. Alpine really do need some points pretty soon, because they are 11 points behind Aston Martin, and for a team like them in the R&D, they're going to either need a miracle race, or they're going to need to start getting some consistent points in the coming 5 races. There is your order in the drivers, and of course the constructors. Mercedes taking the lead on Red Bull, Ferrari maintaining that lead they have on McLaren. Ourselves sort of dropping down a bit, but in a good position at the moment. Leclerc definitely looking good for a top 5 finish, with Ricciardo and Sainz tussling, and Lando Norris still has a lot of catch-up work to do. Well, that is your halfway point in the My Team Career Mode Season 1. If you guys enjoyed it, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks a lot for watching. hope you guys have enjoyed it. It's been a fantastic race. Series of races, you know, we've had 5 great races. I really enjoyed them. This one maybe didn't have the drama we had at the last wet race in Spain, but it was a solid, good one. I enjoyed it, you know, fun one to drive. And hopefully we'll get some drama when we head to my home Grand Prix next time. And hopefully we'll get a decent result. I'm looking forward to that. And that is what I'm going to be catching you guys next time for. But there is our race result once again. Bottas, Verstappen and Perez on the podium. Hamilton, Leclerc, Norris, Ricciardo, Sainz, ourselves and Gasly round out the top 10. And there you go. So that is it for this one. You guys, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I'm going to catch you next time in this series for the second half of Season 1.